Hey folks, we have got another radio review today. This is a brand new one. Been looking forward to seeing this one. The other reviews I've seen and the technical breakdowns I've seen of this have all been super good. So I was really stoked when Retevis reached out and asked if they could send me this one. This is under their brand Ailunce, A-I-L-U-N-C-E. I believe it's Ailunce, not sure. And this is the HA1G Handy Talkie. Let's get into it. So we have a manual, nice presentation here with the radio, which looks really cool, the battery, some cables, charging port. Let's dig in here. This battery seems pretty nice. It is a 2800 milliamp hour battery, so that's pretty nice. We have our belt clip. We have a USB charging cable with a different end on it. We'll talk about that. We've got our charging cradle. We have a USB-A charging brick for it, a USB-A to USB-C charger, and last, but certainly not least, the ever-important lanyard. So we've got a pretty complete kit going on here. I'm going to go ahead and put the battery in here so you can see that. And what do we have? So we have a 5-watt handy talkie. It's got 30 GMRS pre-programmed channels. So that's the 22 normal channels as well as 8 pre-programmed channels, for repeaters. They can be tweaked, but they're in there, and then 220 more customizable channels. So those are good for having your, a channel set up with privacy codes like we do when we're out on the trails, for adding repeaters from all over the country. Whatever you want to do, you can do it here with the Ailunce HA1G. Now, the radio itself is a dual band VHF and UHF. So, of course, like I said, it's got the GMRS. It can receive NOAA weather alerts and FM radio. Okay, I totally get the NOAA alerts and stuff, but FM doesn't do anything for me. We'll get to that. USB charging. So not only on the back does it have a USB port for charging, the charging cradle has USB-C. So instead of the charging dock having its own 110 power on it, it just powers this with USB-C, which I think is great. That probably saves costs. It saves cost of goods. It saves packaging. Definitely saves me from having extra stuff all over. The only problem is this doesn't have any branding on the front. It does on the bottom, so I can always remember that, okay, this is the Ailunce one, but it'd be nice if it said Ailunce on the top so that when I'm looking in a box of charging docks, I can just go, oh, there's the right one. But not having it, that's not a big deal. It does have a light on the front that comes on, tells you when it's charging and when it's completed. Like I mentioned, battery, 2800 milliamp hour battery. That's nice long standby time on that, so you're not charging this thing all the time. A feature that I really like, and I've only seen it on one other radio before this one, but this one does have it as well, is a B channel push to talk button. So a lot of radios, when we're looking at the radio itself, we can see 2 different channels here. We can have, a main channel, a secondary channel, and while you can listen for both of them, replying to the B channel often requires switching from A to B, so it's something before you can transmit. Or with some radios, once you receive something on the B channel, you have either 3 or 5 seconds to reply before any transmission will be on the A channel. Well, on here, I can just hit one of the side buttons here and I start transmitting on the B channel. Love that feature. Again, we'll talk more about all that. The screen, 1.77 inch color screen. And something that I haven't seen on any of the other radios that I personally have tested before is IP67 Waterproof. I'll describe exactly what that is later on, but suffice it to say, that's pretty darn good on a handheld radio. But we'll get to exactly what IP67 means so you understand it completely. Now, do you need to take a moment? I got to drop in my legal disclaimer here. Guys, got to be legal here. Retevis, which is the parent company here, this is Ailunce is one of their brands. They did send me this radio to review. So no cost to me, but they have no input or approval on any of the videos that I do before it goes live. The first time they're going to see this video is after it is live on YouTube. So they have no feedback, no input, no authority, no approval process. They just go, here's a radio, have fun with it. That's it. So everything that you hear opinion-wise about this is my honest and complete opinion about the product. That's the only way I do product reviews. I never agree on take on product that someone else has an approval process on. So there's that. We showed you what's in the box. We got a good selection of accessories, pretty much what you would expect. All of this stuff feels really good. It all seems high quality, and that's one of the things I've liked about Retevis in the past. I did a review a few months ago on their RA87 mobile unit, which was very, very good. I was very happy with that mobile radio. Works great, super happy with it. So I had no doubt that a handy talkie would be a great choice either. So let's take a good look at the radio. First off, on top, we have the on-off and volume control. The second dial, this one's interesting because just by default, it's used for changing the channel real quickly. You can also use the up and down buttons on the front, just like you can with pretty much any other radio, but you can quickly scroll through channels with this top dial. Now, it is also used for navigating through some of the menu options. You'll get to something and go, how do I change this option? Like, what was it? I think the DCS codes or something. You're like, okay, up and down just switches me between receive and transmit. How do I change it? I try typing, nothing works. No, you turn this dial up here to change the setting. So it's multi-feature, it's changing the channel and works with some of the menu options. You have the orange button on top, which by default is set up as an emergency alarm. I always turn that off because I don't want it accidentally going on. But you can program this to be something else. You can program it to do your scan function or to switch to FM radio or to go to the NOAA alerts. So that's cool. And you have this nice antenna. I mean, it seems to do just fine. And it is removable. There's a rubber sleeve around the base of it that you can pull up, and there's a little grub screw in there, and you can remove and replace the antenna if you want. So pretty handy there. I don't see any reason to replace this antenna. It's been just fine. And you also have an indicator light on the front. You'll see when I turn it on, it turns green for a moment, and when I transmit, it turns red. That's handy. So that's pretty much the top of it. We'll move to the side, or the what I would call the right-hand side of it here. You have, normally you would have your speaker and microphone connection on here. But if we open this up, there's a little screw here. All we see are a bunch of pins right here. There's no plugs that we would normally see for not only a microphone and a headset, but also for a programming cable. So this is quite a bit different, and this is one of the ways they've gone about making this thing waterproof, because those plug-in ports will allow water in, and the programming cable that comes with it connects to some of the pins that are on here. So it doesn't use the universal programming cable that we see on the talk pods, the Baofangs, you know, every other radio out there. This has to have its own programming cable because of these connections on the side, which again make it waterproof. So that's fairly handy. On the back, we have the screws here that come off to attach the belt clip. I don't know why they don't come with the belt clip on, but whatever. Just two little Phillips screws. Pull those off and you're good to go. You have a USB charging port here and the pins here that connect to the charging port. Moving to the side here, which would be the left side, we have our large push to talk button, which every radio needs to have, and two side keys. So in the menus, these are SK keys. So they're side keys, SK. So you have SK1 and SK2, and you can program these just like you can the top. So one of these I have as the B channel push to talk, and I disable the second one because I just didn't want any of those features on there. I don't need a scan I can do right from the front. I don't need a push button for that. I don't need to go to FM radio. I just turn that stuff off because I don't need it. So no need for me to have that stuff on there. And on the front, let's talk about the main event here, right? We have the 1.77-inch color display. It uses colors to highlight what menu item you're in, what channel you're on, whether you're transmitting or not. So the colors are used relatively effectively. I'm going to dive more into that when we get to my actual opinion of things and things that I've run into with this. But one thing I do really, really like, when you are transmitting, it pops up a little extra display here with the frequency that you're transmitting on and privacy codes that you're using. So that's kind of handy. I like that. And it's same if I do the B channel, and you see the red turns on here, and it pops up and it tells me I'm on DCS 36 at 467.600. So I like that. It's just kind of geeky. You don't need that information, but it's handy. I'm pretty jazzed with that. So the buttons on here, very clearly marked, white on black lettering, easy to read, very clear. Everything is really easy to work with. The one thing that is extremely different from any other radio is the menu system. This thing, at first glance, you're like, how the hell do I use this? Everything is so different. But it's broken down. Radio settings, zone settings, which are like groups of channels that you can create. I'll never use that. Individual channel settings, your scan settings, your signaling, emergency setting, and call tone, FM radio, weather settings, and factory reset. So if we dig into the radio settings here, we have our display mode, our band setting, backlight, key functions, audio, voice operated switch, power saving, menu timeout, language, firmware information. And on channel settings, we have frequency, DCS codes, CTSS codes, all that other good stuff. So the menu is actually really easy to work with. Again, I'm kind of going over features right now. We'll get to my opinions of everything in a little bit. But it is pretty easy to navigate. But okay, we've gone over the accessories, the specs, the features, the radio. Let's talk review now. My opinions of it. Out of the box, great radio, easy to use. It's pretty much ready to go. The only thing I did different is I went into the radio settings and I changed the display from frequency to name. So it says GMRS 1, GMRS 2, repeater 1, repeater 2. So here we are on GMRS 18. So I want the name on there. So when someone says, hey, let's go to channel 15, I don't have to know what frequency that is. I can just see it by name. So I wish that was the default for most people, because beginners, new people to a radio, they don't know frequencies, they know channels. So the default should be the name on here. That's the only out-of-the-box thing that I have going with this. I think it should be name. All right. The range, the clarity, absolutely fantastic. No complaints about how it worked. Like I said, out of the box as a GMRS radio. As it sits right now, the radio is probably my favorite in terms of how it feels. It is larger than most radios by quite a bit and fits really well into my Sasquatch-sized hands. For me, it's weighted perfectly. It has these little wings, I guess you could say, right here, so that when I'm holding it, it just kind of gets cradled in my hands, making it a lot harder for me to drop this. And when we're out, we're doing recoveries or we're hooking up winches and things in the snow, I can't tell you how many times I have dropped a radio. This is a lot harder to drop because it just feels good. It's got a good texture on it, and those wings like there, they help my hand hold it a lot better. So I really like that. Okay, let's talk about the IP67 rating for a moment. What does that mean? Well, an IP rating is an industry standard for dust and waterproofing, right? The first number is for solids, like dust, right? How much dust can get into it. The second number is for water. So a 6 rating, the IP67 rating that it has, the first number for solids, the 6 is the highest rating you can get. So it means virtually no dust can get inside the unit, not standard size dirt dust that you would get, right? The water rating, while being a 7, is not the highest rating that you can get, but it is more than sufficient for a handheld radio, because a 7 means that this can be submerged up to a meter, or about 3.3 feet for us Americans, right? About 3.5 feet, 3 feet of water for 30 minutes and not have any issues, still be fully functional. Now, could you drop into the deep end of a pool? Yes, momentarily, right? But not for 30 minutes. It can withstand a meter of water for 30 minutes. A higher rating, an 8 or a 9, starts getting into deeper waters, pressure, and stuff like that. Well, if you're dropping this into 100 feet of water, it's not going to survive, all right? No radio is going to. And it shouldn't, because you shouldn't do that, right? But if you drop it in the snow, you drop it in a mud puddle, something like that, it takes you a few minutes to find it, it's going to be just fine. And again, for me, who has dropped many, many radios in the snow and in mud puddles, that's pretty good. I hope I never need to be in a real world situation where this is sitting in a meter of water for 30 minutes. But in those cases where it has fallen in the mud, it's fallen in a river, things like that, happy to have a radio that is rated this high. And that's why this one is going to be on me, because I'm klutzy when it comes to my gear. All right, let's talk about programming the radio. And by programming, I mean doing things more than just having the standard GMRS frequencies. That can be adding repeaters. It can be having custom settings on a channel. Now, in other videos and stuff, I've discussed what privacy codes are. In fact, I'll put a link up above to explain what privacy codes are, what they're used for, and how to set them up. But we use privacy codes on the trail. It allows us to filter out everything else. So that's really good when you're on a busy trail and you only want to hear the people in your group. So that's why you do programming. For the repeaters that I use, there's 2 different frequencies, there's 2 different privacy codes. It takes a little bit more work to set those up. Now, normally, you would take the programming cable and plug it into your computer and run either the manufacturer software or a program called Chirp, which supports hundreds and hundreds of radios, and do that programming in a very easy to use fashion, and then push it up here. Okay, I say normally because I couldn't get that to work. Chirp does not support it. It's not listed as one of the supported radios, and Chirp is kind of the industry standard programming tool, but the fact that it doesn't work is not that big of a deal. So they have their own software. I downloaded the software on a Windows 10 and a Windows 11 laptop and could not get the software to even run. It kept throwing different DLLs not found problems, and I was never able to get the software to run, even though I had installed those DLLs. So I had no way of programming it with any piece of software. That's the bad news. The good news is that the menu is so easy to work with and actually allows you to put in alphanumeric characters that I'm able to do 100% of the programming from the radio. That is not something I can say about any other radio. Now, I could, on everything else, I can go in and I can set up the repeaters and all that. I just can't name them because I can't put in A through Z in any fashion. I can with this radio. It's kind of like the old A9 texting, right? It's, you hit the number 1, once you get 1, 2 you get capital A, hit it again you get capital B, another you get capital C, then you get lowercase a, lowercase b, lowercase c, and you can do character by character. Now, if you've ever done A9 texting like I did when I was younger, I can whip through that pretty quick and type in a long name. Typically, it's going to be like Trail, M600, 700S, 700N, 725. So for the most part, I'm not putting in complicated long strings of text, but it's easy enough that I could fully program this thing with a bunch of extra repeaters and custom channels directly from the radio. So if that wouldn't have been the case, I would have been really ticked about not being able to use their software or Chirp. However, there's one more thing. While the interface is good enough and simple enough to allow you to enter letters and navigate through everything and find everything, the colors really need to be improved. So in some cases, I mean, even right here, I'm looking at my A channel setting and I have black text on dark blue background. That makes it really hard to see. That should be white text on the dark blue background. Make it real easy to see that. When you're in some of the menus, like setting up the CTS tones, those are really difficult because you have very tiny letters that are dark on a dark colored background. They're very hard to see. Now, just holding the phone right and getting close and with my glasses adjusted just right, I was able to see it and get them done and able to program it. And once I realized, I'm like, okay, I just really need to pay attention there. Then I was able to whip through it pretty good. But those colors really need to be improved on here or have multiple themes or, you know what I'd really like? An option, right? Give me the options to change these colors somehow. That would be awesome. Make it easier for me to see what I'm doing. It works, it's functional, it's easy to use, but the colors are really annoying sometimes. But once it's programmed, then you're not really dealing with those. So again, it's kind of a short-term annoyance thing other than, a big issue. So yes, it's annoying. I couldn't get their software to work. Yes, it's annoying that the colors are a little off, but once those are set up, there are no other issues that I've had with this radio. The range has been fantastic and everything. Now, to be fair, I'm not a radio expert. I don't have meters and oscilloscopes and all that, but I did watch a number of other videos from more experienced guys who are totally techie into this stuff, and I'll put links in the description below so you can find those channels if you want to see exactly how they did their testing. Some people managed, they were getting like 4.2 to 4.8 watts. Someone else got 5.4 watts. Someone else got 5.2 watts. So to call it a 5-watt radio with a plus or minus differentiation of fractions of a watt is good enough for me. That's plenty within my range. If they would have said every test we do is 3 to 4 watts, then I would have been like, okay, that's a little misleading to call it a 5-watt radio. But the fact that some guys got a little bit less, some got a little bit more, and that could literally be the difference in how their equipment was set up, to me, I'm just going to call it a 5-watt radio. Now, some other radios, when they're transmitting, they have what's called spurious transmissions, which you'll have the main frequency that it's transmitting on have the big peak, but you might have little sub-frequencies that are getting transmitted as well. This has none of those problems. This is a very, very clean signal. Again, check out the videos that I list below for technical tests to show just how good that is. Our tests consist of real-world testing in real-world situations, and in those situations, it's worked great. The main test for range that I do is to connect to the Denver's main repeater. Now, for us, that is 29.87 miles away. So pretty much dead on 30 miles, a pretty clear line of sight. You know, there's some low hills and things, but for the most part, it's a pretty straight shot from my front porch to that repeater. And I was able to hold a clear conversation with other people. What I'm getting from the repeater was absolutely rock solid in here, sounded perfectly clear because it's a 50-watt radio on top of a water tower, so very good signal. The people listening to me said I was a little quiet, and every once in a while there'd be a little static crackle, but considering I'm pushing a 5-watt radio 30 miles into downtown Denver, that is pretty exceptional. The only other handheld radio that I've had that has been able to make that connection with that good of quality was an 8-watt radio, not a 5-watt. This is the only 5-watt radio I've had or tested that could hit that particular repeater from here. So, excellent range, excellent quality. Now for me, the second push to talk button. For most people, I would imagine that is no big deal at all. They'll never use it. It's a non-issue. In fact, they probably will never even care about monitoring a second channel. So let's be fair about that. This feature is not for everybody. For me, this is an important feature. Now, around town and things, it means I can have 2 different repeaters on here. So if I'm in between, I can be monitoring 2 different repeaters, and I can easily reply to whichever one and have multiple conversations going at the same time. More so though, when we're on a trail, we do new driver experiences, we do training runs, we do like women only days, things like that, where we could have 10, 15, 20 vehicles with us. We may have a more experienced person in the middle, we call the mid gunner, and someone at the end, we call the tail gunner. And I need to have radio communication with those people that is separate from the communication with the entire group. Sometimes they want to tell me what's going on with a particular driver, someone's not doing something right, they're not obeying the rules, whatever. So we need to be able to communicate separate from the rest of the group. So in the past, we've just had a second radio in each vehicle, one for the group and one for the trail leaders. So that has always worked, but having it all in one radio is a huge matter of convenience for me instead of having to have multiple radios. So very happy to have that push to talk button on there. I think it's a great feature. Again, not for everybody, but in our particular use case, absolutely love it. So the real question is, does all of this justify the $65 price tag? With a lot of handy talkies coming in from $40 to $50, for an additional $15 here, over the other ones, you get an IP67 radio with 220 programmable channels, a fairly easy to use menu system, excellent range, and great sound quality. You also get a second push to talk button, 2 ways to charge with USB-C, and a lot more. So do I think it's worth dropping an extra 15 bucks on? Well, yeah, that's a big yes for me. If you see me on a trail, you will see this radio on my side. It has quickly become my favorite handheld. And for all of these reasons, I love the way it feels. I love the way it works. I'm still hoping Retevis fixes their own software or gets it to work with Chirp, which would be ideal, as it would definitely just make my life easier because I could do it on a Mac. the fact that I can completely set it up and get everything running, and I did eventually get the software to work and get it all programmed, that's fine, you know. But on a brand new machine, it did take some doing to get that software to work properly. So that was a big negative. But other than that, once it's set up, it is just a great GMRS radio. Now, the fact that you can do everything fairly easy without the software is kind of cool. I can take one right out of the box, set up our repeaters, set up the our unique trail channel that has our own privacy codes, and I don't need to bring my laptop. So that's a huge plus when someone brings a brand new one to the trail. Tap, 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 it's all set up. So for the ease of use, the comfort in my hand, those little wings on here that's going to keep me from dropping it, I think it's worth a lot more than lunch over at Carl's Jr. or something. So I'm really happy with this, and I hope they continue to knock out some great products like the HA1G here. This is a great radio. Highly recommend it. I mean, it's hard to go wrong with pretty much anything I've ever recommended on this channel, but if I had to pick a favorite right now, right this second, it'd be the HA1G. So thanks for watching, everybody. This has been Kerry. Be safe out there. We'll see you on the trails.